Welcome, weary wanderer, to a night where history whispers you to sleep, though it's more a gritty tale than a lullaby. Picture this: medieval London, a city draped in fog so thick it chokes your breath, where survival feels like dodging fate itself. As you dim the lights, pull a blanket close, and perhaps switch on a fan for that gentle hum. Let's slip into a world of mud, misery, and stubborn hope. This is boring history for sleep, crafted for stressed souls seeking solace in stories of the past. Like and subscribe if you're ready to drift through time, and drop a comment. Where are you tuning in from, and what's the hour? Tonight, you're a poor Londoner, scraping by in a city that smells of despair and dreams. Brace yourself. The streets are alive, and they're not kind. You wake, or rather, you surrender to the fact that sleep has abandoned you, sprawled across a straw mattress that smells like it fought in a war and lost. It's medieval London, and your home isn't a sanctuary, but a battlefield, a single room shared with 6 others who breathe, snore, and occasionally kick you in the ribs. Your cousin, his wife, their 3 squabbling children, and a stranger who wandered in last week. Nobody knows his name, but he's claimed a corner and a share of the blanket. The walls, if you can call them that, are crumbling plaster, streaked with soot and stains you've learned not to question. A damp chill seeps through the cracks, mingling with the stench of unwashed bodies, yesterday's cabbage stew, and something faintly sour you suspect is despair. This is no cozy cottage. It's a grim fortress where survival demands you guard your patch of floor as fiercely as a knight defends his honor. The air is thick and heavy, with the kind of dampness that clings to your skin and makes your bones ache. You shift, and the straw beneath you crackles, poking through the thin wool blanket that hasn't seen soap since the last king's coronation. Somewhere in the dark, a rat, bold as a tax collector, scurries across the floor. You've named him Reginald, not out of affection, but because he's been here longer than the stranger, and you're half convinced he's plotting to charge rent. The floorboards creak under his tiny feet, each groan a reminder of the room's fragility, as if the whole place might collapse if the wind blows too hard. A single window, more cracked than glass, lets in slivers of gray light and the distant clamor of cartwheels, shouting vendors, and someone yelling about stolen pigs. You squint at it, wondering if it's worth opening, but the memory of last week's breeze, carrying the butcher's awful stink, keeps it shut. In the corner, a battered wooden bucket serves as your toilet, your wash basin, and in moments of true desperation, your drinking water. It's not a choice, it's a necessity, a grim testament to a city that cares little for the poor. You've learned to breathe shallowly, especially in the mornings when the bucket's contents are freshest, though the air never truly clears. The walls bear no decoration, only patches where paint has flaked away, revealing the wooden bones of a house that's seen too many winters. A single chair, wobbling on 3 legs, stands like a tired sentinel, and the bed, shared by 4, is a lumpy heap of straw and regret. You've heard tales of noble houses with tapestries and fireplaces that work, but here, warmth is a memory, and comfort is a rumor. The ceiling drips, not just when it rains, but as if it weeps for you, and you've stopped wondering what's in the water that pools on the floor. Life in this room is a negotiation with chaos. You share every inch with your makeshift family, each person carving out their own sliver of space. Your cousin's wife mutters about the price of tallow candles, her voice sharp enough to cut through the gloom. The children, too young to know better, bicker over a crust of bread, their small fists swinging like drunken knights. The stranger snores, oblivious, clutching a sack that might hold his worldly possessions, or just more straw. You envy his ability to sleep, to escape this place even for a moment, but the reality of medieval London pulls you back. This room, for all its misery, is home, not because it's warm or welcoming, but because it's yours. You know which floorboard squeaks loudest, which corner stays dry, and how to angle your body to avoid the worst of the drafts. It's a fragile familiarity, built on necessity rather than love, and yet there's a strange resilience in this shared suffering. You catch your cousin's wife humming a tune as she patches a torn cloak, a fleeting act of defiance against the grind. The children, when they're not fighting, giggle over a game of tossing pebbles, their laughter a spark in the dark. Even Reginald, that wretched rat, seems to have a routine, darting to the same corner each dawn as if he's got somewhere to be. You wonder, as you lie there, how anyone endures this. The answer isn't strength or courage, it's stubbornness, the kind that makes you get up each morning despite the cold, the stink, and the knowledge that today will be no kinder than yesterday. In a city that seems designed to break you, this room is your first test, a daily reminder that survival is a victory, however small. The bucket in the corner is more than just a grim necessity. It's a symbol of how low life can sink. You've seen neighbors fall ill after drinking from similar buckets, their faces pale as the plague claimed them. The water, when you dare to use it, is cloudy, tasting of earth and something metallic you try not to name. Bathing is a fantasy, reserved for the wealthy who can afford heated water and private tubs. Here, you make do with a damp rag, shared among the household, and you've learned to ignore the grime that never quite washes away. The bucket's stench is a constant, blending with the room's other odors into a perfume that could only be called medieval misery. You joke sometimes that it's the smell of survival, but the humor is thin, stretched like the threadbare blanket you pull tighter against the dawn's chill. The room's sounds are a relentless chorus. Beyond the window's rattle, the city hums with life, vendors hawking eels, dogs barking, and the ever-present coughs of neighbors who sound like they're auditioning for death itself. Inside, it's no quieter. Your cousin snores like a bellows, the children whimper in their sleep, and the stranger mutters something unintelligible, perhaps a prayer or a curse. The walls, thin as promises, let every noise bleed through, from the neighbors' arguments to the creak of a cart outside. You've learned to sleep through it, or at least to pretend you do, because true rest is as rare as a clean shirt. Each night, so you lie awake, mapping the room's flaws in your mind, the drip that never stops, the board that groans under pressure, the rat that's bolder than you'll ever be. This is no place for dreams, yet dreams persist. You think of the tales you've heard, of knights and kings, of feasts where bread isn't as hard as stone. They feel like lies, spun by bards who've never seen a room like this. But sometimes, in the quiet moments before dawn, you imagine a life where the bucket stays empty, where the air doesn't choke, and where Reginald finds a new home. It's a fleeting thought, crushed by the reality of another day. You're not noble, not strong, not even particularly clever, just a soul clinging to existence in a city that doesn't care. And yet, you're here, breathing, enduring, because that's what people do. You roll off the mattress, careful not to wake the others, and brace yourself for the fight that is morning. The shock of this life isn't just the filth or the crowding, it's the realization that this is normal. Your neighbors, your kin, the thousands packed into London's slums, they all live like this, or worse. The baker down the street, whose bread you'll never afford, has his own struggles, though his room might have an extra chair. The nobleman in his manor, with his roaring fire, still fears the plague that doesn't discriminate. In this room, you're not alone in your suffering. You're part of a city that groans under the same weight. And somehow, that shared misery binds you. You've seen your cousin share his last scrap of cheese with a child and heard the stranger hum a tune that calms the room. These small acts, barely noticeable, are what keep you going, proof that humanity survives even where comfort doesn't. Compare this to today, where a hot shower and clean water are a tap away, and you might feel a pang of gratitude. But don't be too quick to judge. The people of medieval London didn't just survive, they lived, loved, and laughed in defiance of their world. They sang in taverns, told stories by candlelight, and held fast to hope as fragile as their walls. Their resilience wasn't born of strength, but of necessity, a stubborn refusal to let the city win. As you lie in your modern bed, far from the stench and the cold, you might wonder how they did it. The answer lies in this room, in its dripping ceiling and its brazen rat, where every day you choose to endure is a quiet triumph, a testament to the human spirit that no amount of filth can extinguish. Morning creeps into your cramped, medieval London hovel, but it's less a dawn and more a grudging admission that night has given up. You roll off the lumpy straw mattress, its sharp edges jabbing your ribs like an overzealous tax collector. The air bites, cold enough to make your teeth chatter, and you squint into the gray half-light filtering through the cracked window. Somewhere in the gloom, Reginald the Rat, your unofficial roommate, scurries, probably plotting his next raid on your meager bread stash. You pause, one foot hovering above the floor, because the puddle by the corner bucket isn't just water. It's the aftermath of last night's chamber pot mishap, a silent menace you've learned to navigate, like a sailor dodging reefs. This isn't waking up. It's a declaration of war against a city that seems determined to grind you into the mud. You fumble for the cracked jug on the wobbly table, its contents so cold they might as well be chipped from a glacier. Splashing your face feels like a punishment, the icy water stinging your skin and making your bones ache, but it's the closest you'll get to cleanliness today. You'd kill for a warm bath, but that's a fantasy for lords and their pampered dogs, not for you, a tanner's apprentice scraping by in London's filth. Your one good sock is missing, likely stolen by Reginald, who's got a better wardrobe than you at this point. You pull on a tunic, stiff with grime and older than the king's last decree, and wrap yourself in a cloak so threadbare it's more holes than wool. It smells of smoke, sweat, and despair, but it's yours, and in this city, that's something. The room stirs as your makeshift family begins their own grim morning rituals. Your cousin's wife, her face etched with lines deeper than the Thames, mutters about the price of candles, her voice sharp enough to cut through the fog outside. The children, 3 small bundles of chaos, bicker over a crust of bread, their voices rising in a cacophony that rivals the street vendors. The stranger in the corner, still nameless, grunts and rolls over, clutching his sack as if it holds the crown jewels instead of a few moldy turnips. You envy his ability to sleep through the noise, but then again, he's probably too exhausted to care. The air is thick with the stench of unwashed bodies and last night's stew, a sour mix that clings to your throat like a bad memory. You breathe through your mouth, a trick you've mastered to survive mornings like this. Breakfast is a cruel joke. You fish out a crust of bread from under the mattress, where you hide it from Reginald's greedy paws. It's hard as a cobblestone, and you're not entirely sure it's free of mold, but hunger doesn't care about quality. You gnaw at it, your jaw aching with the effort, each bite a reminder that food is a luxury you can't afford. Tea is your only salvation, not because it's comforting, but because boiling water is the one thing standing between you and a grave dug by cholera. The kettle, blackened and dented, sits over a pitiful fire that's more smoke than flame, and you sip the bitter brew, wincing as it scalds your tongue. Milk is a distant dream, something the wealthy splash into their cups while you make do with water that's been boiled until it's only mildly lethal. Outside, the city is waking, its sounds bleeding through the thin walls like an unwelcome guest. Cartwheels clatter on uneven stones, vendors shout about eels and ale, and someone nearby coughs, a deep, wet hack that sounds like a one-way ticket to the churchyard. You glance at the window, its cracks framing a world of gray fog and fleeting shadows. The children, undeterred by the cold, scramble for their own tattered clothes, their small hands already calloused from work no child should do. Your cousin's wife snaps at them to hurry, her voice a mix of exhaustion and resolve, and you wonder how she keeps going. Maybe it's the same stubborn spark that keeps you moving, the unspoken pact that you'll face another day, no matter how brutal. The shock of this morning isn't the cold or the hunger, it's the realization that this is your life, day after day, with no promise of better. You think of modern mornings, hot coffee, soft beds, the hum of a heater, and it feels like a fairy tale. In medieval London, comfort is a myth, and every sunrise demands you fight for your place in it. Yet there's a strange beauty in this struggle. Your cousin's wife, despite her weariness, braids her daughter's hair with care, humming a tune that's older than the city itself. The children, between their squabbles, share a fleeting grin over a broken stick they've turned into a toy. Even you, chewing your rock-hard bread, find a moment of defiance in the act of eating, of surviving one more morning in a city that doesn't care. This resilience isn't heroic. It's raw, born of necessity rather than choice. You're not a knight, not a scholar, just a soul clinging to existence in a world that smells of mud and misery. But you're here, breathing, moving, and that's enough. As you pull your cloak tighter and step toward the door, you carry the weight of countless others who've done the same, ordinary people who built lives in the cracks of a brutal city. Their stubbornness, their small acts of defiance, are what keep London alive, and you're part of it, whether you like it or not. The door creaks open, and the fog waits, ready to swallow you whole. You push open the creaking door of your medieval London hovel, and the world hits you like a fist, a wall of fog so thick it's less air, and more a living, choking beast. This isn't the romantic mist of poets' dreams, swirling gently over moonlit hills. It's a gray, suffocating monster born from wood smoke, river damp, and the city's collective misery. The stench slams into you, charred logs from 1,000 fires, rotting fish from the Thames, and the unmistakable reek of sewage that clings to every breath. You can't see the end of the street, or even your own outstretched hand, as the fog wraps around you like a damp cloak, heavy and unyielding. In this moment, you're not just stepping outside, you're diving into a battlefield where every step is a gamble, and medieval London, with its pea super fog, is the merciless opponent daring you to keep moving. The air tastes like ash. Each inhales a gritty reminder of the city's endless fires, burning everything from oak to the cheapest coal the poor can scrounge. You squint into the haze, trying to make sense of the shapes that loom like ghosts. A cart rattling by, a horse snorting, or perhaps a thief sizing you up from the shadows. It's impossible to tell, and that uncertainty gnaws at you, a constant whisper that danger is never more than a step away. The fog doesn't just obscure, it deceives, turning a lamppost into a lurking figure or a puddle into a bottomless pit. You've heard stories of people vanishing into this mist, swallowed by alleys, or tripped into gutters, and you wonder if today might be your turn. Yet you keep walking, because standing still in medieval London is an invitation for trouble to find you. Sounds pierce the fog like arrows, chaotic and unrelenting. A vendor's shout, hawking eels or ale, cuts through the murk, sharp and desperate, as if his life depends on selling one more fish. A dog barks, its yelp swallowed by the clatter of cartwheels on uneven cobbles. Somewhere nearby, a cough erupts, deep and wet, the kind that makes you cross the street to avoid whatever plague is brewing. It's the soundtrack of survival, a cacophony that never quiets, even in the early hours. You try to block it out, but the noise is as much a part of the city as the mud under your feet. The fog amplifies everything, turning whispers into threats and footsteps into warnings. You've learned to listen closely because in this city, what you can't see can still kill you. The Thames, London's lifeblood and sewer, is the fog's cruel partner. Its stench, rotting vegetables, dead animals, and human waste rises like a curse, blending with the smoke to create a perfume that could only be bottled as ode to despair. You pass an alley where the butcher dumps his offal, the smell so thick it feels like it's coating your throat. You've heard tales of cholera swept through neighborhoods, carried by water no one dares trust, and you wonder if the fog itself is poisoned, seeping into your lungs with every breath. Historical records tell us that medieval London's air was a deadly mix, with wood smoke and river miasma claiming lives as surely as any blade. You don't know the science, but you feel it. Each inhale is a risk, each exhale a small victory. The shock of this moment isn't just the fog's thickness or its stench, it's the realization that this is normal, a daily assault every Londoner endures. You think of modern cities, where clean air is a given and fog is a rare inconvenience, not a death sentence. In medieval London, the fog is a tyrant dictating your pace, your path, your very breath. Yet you keep moving, because stopping means surrendering. You've seen others do it, the vendor shouting through the haze, his voice hoarse but unbroken. The beggar, barely visible, still muttering prayers for alms. Even the children, darting through the streets with a reckless joy that defies the gloom. Their resilience isn't born of strength, but of necessity, a stubborn refusal to let the city's cruelty win. You adjust your cloak, its thin fabric no match for the damp, and take a cautious step forward. The ground is slick with mud, horse manure, and who knows what else. A slippery trap that threatens to send you sprawling. You've learned to walk carefully, eyes scanning for ruts or worse. Last week, you nearly stepped on a dead rat, its body half buried in the muck. The streets are a labyrinth, narrow and twisting, with no signs to guide you. You rely on memory, counting corners, and listening for the church bells that occasionally break through the fog's muffling embrace. Historical accounts describe medieval London's streets as chaotic, with no proper sanitation or planning, and you feel that chaos in every step, each one a small act of defiance against a city that seems designed to break you. People emerge from the fog-like apparitions, their faces half seen before vanishing again. A woman hurries past, her shawl pulled tight, muttering about the price of bread. A boy, no older than 10, darts by, clutching a basket of questionable fish, his eyes sharp with the hunger that drives him. You know him, or someone like him. Children here don't play. They work, surviving on wit and speed. You've heard of pickpockets who thrive in this fog, their hands quicker than a prayer, and you clutch your own meager belongings closer. The city watch, in their heavy cloaks, is useless, more likely to demand a bribe than to stop a thief. You've seen them shake down vendors, their cudgels swinging like a warning to anyone who dares complain. The fog doesn't just hide, it transforms. A horse becomes a monster, its hooves thundering too close for comfort. A shout could be a greeting or a threat, and you've learned not to linger long enough to find out. You pass a tavern, its door ajar, spilling out the scent of stale ale and the muffled laughter of men who've already started drinking. It's tempting to step inside, to escape the fog's cold grip, but you can't afford the coin or the time. You're due at the tanner's workshop, where the day's labor will leave you reeking worse than the streets. The fog, for all its menace, is your only companion as you navigate this city, a constant reminder that in medieval London, even seeing is a luxury. This struggle, this endless dance with the fog, is what defines life here. You think of today's world, where air purifiers hum and weather apps warn of haze. In medieval London, there's no escape, no forecast, just the fog and your will to keep going. Yet there's a strange beauty in this fight. The vendor still shouting despite the mist stealing his voice, the woman pressing on despite the cold, the boy running with his fish as if the fog were just another game. They don't give up, and neither do you. Their lives, like yours, are woven into the city's fabric, a tapestry of survival stitched with grit and stubborn hope. You pull your cloak tighter, take a shallow breath, and step deeper into the fog, because in this city, moving forward is the only way to live. Your stomach growls like a stray dog, a low, insistent rumble that echoes through the dim haze of your medieval London morning. You're still half tangled in the fog's damp grip, your cloak heavy with the city's stench, but hunger doesn't care about the cold or the filth. It's a relentless master, gnawing at your insides as you shuffle back into your cramped hovel, hoping for something, anything, to silence it. Breakfast in this grim corner of the world isn't a meal. It's a ritual of lowered expectations, a daily reminder that survival in medieval London means making do with scraps while dreaming of feasts you'll never taste. You fumble under the straw mattress, where you hide a crust of bread from Reginald, that thieving rat who's probably eating better than you. The bread is hard as a cobblestone, its edges tinged with a suspicious green, but you're too hungry to care. In this city, food is a fight, and you're already losing. You sit on the wobbly chair, its one good leg creaking under your weight, and stare at the crust like it's a puzzle to be solved. Each bite is a battle, your jaw aching as you chew through the stale, gritty mass. It tastes of dust and despair, with a faint aftertaste of the mold you're pretending isn't there. You've heard tales of noble banquets, roast mutton, golden loaves, wine that doesn't burn your throat. But those are stories for people with names on their doors, not for you, a tanner's apprentice whose wealth is measured in calluses. The children, huddled in the corner, watch you with wide, hungry eyes, their own breakfast a shared handful of oats that look like they've been through a rat's digestive tract. Your cousin's wife stirs a pot over a pitiful fire, muttering about the cost of firewood, her voice as sharp as the knife she uses to scrape the pot's blackened bottom. Tea is your only salvation, not because it's comforting, but because it's the one thing in this city that might not kill you. You pour water from the cracked jug into a dented kettle, the liquid cloudy with whatever the Thames coughed up this week. Boiling is your shield against the diseases that stalk London's streets: cholera, dysentery, the nameless fevers that take whole families overnight. Historical records paint a grim picture. Medieval London's water was a toxic stew of sewage, animal carcasses, and tannery runoff, with public pumps serving as breeding grounds for death. You don't know the science, but you've seen enough neighbors clutch their stomachs and fade away to trust only what's been boiled. The fire sputters, barely alive, and you curse the price of wood, which costs more than the bread you're choking down. The tea, when it's ready, is bitter and scalding, but you sip it anyway. Each swallows a small act of defiance against a city that wants you dead. Milk is a fantasy, a luxury for merchants who can afford the real thing instead of the chalky swill sold by street vendors. You pass a baker's stall on your way to the workshop, the scent of fresh bread wafting through the fog like a cruel taunt. It's not your bread, not your life. Those golden loaves belong to men with gold chains, men who don't know the sting of hunger or the fear of a bucket that doubles as a toilet. You glance at the crust in your hand, its surface now speckled with soot from the air, and force another bite. The children, meanwhile, have moved on to fighting over a single shriveled apple, their laughter sharp and fleeting, a sound that cuts through the room's gloom like a stray sunbeam. You wonder how they find the energy, how anyone does when every day is a negotiation with starvation. The shock of this moment isn't just the emptiness of your stomach, it's the realization that this hunger is your constant companion, as familiar as the fog or the stench. In medieval London, food wasn't a right, it was a privilege, and one you rarely had. Historical accounts tell us that the working poor survived on bread, pottage, and the occasional scrap of cheese, with malnutrition a silent killer that weakened bodies before disease finished the job. You look at the children, their cheeks hollow, but their eyes bright, and you see the paradox of this city. Life persists, even when it shouldn't. Your cousin's wife, her hands rough from years of scrubbing, spoons out a thin gruel for the kids, her face a mask of exhaustion and resolve. She doesn't complain, she just keeps moving, because stopping means giving up. You think of modern kitchens, where fridges hum with abundance, and a quick snack is a tap away. The contrast is jarring. Today, hunger is a choice for most. not a sentence. In medieval London, every bite was a victory, every meal a defiance of a city that seemed designed to starve you. Yet there's a strange beauty in this struggle. The children, despite their hunger, chase each other around the room, their giggles a rebellion against despair. Your cousin's wife, between her muttered curses, shares a dry joke about the baker's prices, and you can't help but smirk. These moments, fleeting and fragile, are what keep you going. You finish the crust, your stomach still protesting, and wrap your cloak tighter, ready to face the streets. The fog waits outside, but so does life, stubborn and unyielding. The room is quiet now, save for the crackle of the dying fire and the soft snores of the stranger in the corner. You glance at the bucket, and its contents are a grim reminder of the choices you don't have. You've heard of people drinking from it in desperation, and you shudder knowing you're one bad day away from that fate. The Thames, London's lifeblood, is also its poison, a river that carries the city's waste and spits it back into your cup. You've seen neighbors fall, their bodies racked by fever after trusting the wrong pump. Boiling water is your only defense, but even that feels like a luxury when firewood costs more than your daily wage. You sip the last of the tea, its heat a brief comfort against the chill that never leaves your bones. Outside, the city's sounds grow louder, a chorus of survival that never pauses. A vendor's cry, sharp and desperate, cuts through the fog, selling pies you can't afford and wouldn't trust. A cart rattles past, its wheels grinding against the cobbles, and you hear the faint clink of coins as someone buys a loaf you'll never taste. You think of the baker's stall again, its warmth and light a world apart from your reality. In modern times, food is a click away. Delivery apps, grocery stores, and pantries stocked with more than you could eat in a month. Here, it's a daily battle, a test of endurance where the prize is another day of hunger. Yet you're not alone in this fight. Every soul in this city, from the beggar to the merchant, knows the ache of want, and somehow that shared struggle binds you. You stand, brushing crumbs from your tunic, and glance at the children. They're playing now, tossing a broken spoon between them, their laughter a defiance of the hunger that clings to them like the fog. Your cousin's wife catches your eye, and for a moment you share a look, not of hope, but of understanding. You're all in this together, fighting the same city, the same hunger, the same relentless grind. In medieval London, breakfast isn't a meal, it's a statement, a refusal to let the city win. You step toward the door, the crust gone but the hunger still there, and you carry with you the stubborn will of those who came before. They ate their scraps, laughed through their pain, and lived because in this city, surviving is its own kind of triumph. You step out of your hovel into the medieval streets of London, and the city greets you like a slap, a chaotic beast pulsing with mud, noise, and danger. The fog clings to you, thick and sour, but it's the ground beneath your feet that demands your attention. A slippery stew of dirt, horse manure, and the occasional bloated rat carcass, glistening like a grim trophy. There are no sidewalks, just a mucky battlefield where every step is a calculated risk. A cart barrels past, its wheels spraying filth that clings to your threadbare cloak, and you flinch as a horse snorts, its hooves too close for comfort. This isn't a street, it's a gauntlet, and medieval London, with its relentless din and hidden threats, dares you to survive it. You grip your tattered bag, knowing pickpockets lurk in the haze, their hands quicker than your prayers. The air hums with the city's soundtrack, a cacophony that never pauses. A vendor's shout pierces the fog, hawking herring that smells more dead than fresh, his voice hoarse from hours of yelling. Somewhere nearby, a beggar mutters for alms, his pleas drowned by the clatter of a cart and the sharp crack of a whip. A woman screams about stolen apples, her voice blending into the general roar of hawkers, dogs, and drunks. You hear as a cough, deep, wet, and ominous, from an alley, a reminder that disease stalks these streets as surely as any thief. Historical records paint a vivid picture. Medieval London's thoroughfares were unplanned, narrow, and filthy, with no sanitation to curb the spread of plague or filth. You don't need records to know this. The stench of rotting vegetables and human waste tells the story. A perfume so vile it could curdle hope itself. You navigate by instinct, your feet seeking solid ground where none exists. The street is a river of muck, ankle deep in places, and you've learned to step lightly to avoid sinking into a puddle that smells like death warmed over. Last week, you saw a man slip and fall face first into the mire, emerging with a look of defeat that you've come to recognize. You dodge a runaway pig, its squeals cutting through the fog, and nearly collide with a drunken apprentice, his breath reeking of cheap ale. The city watch, in their patched cloaks, loiter nearby, but they're no help, more likely to shake you down for a penny than to stop the brawl erupting 3 doors down. You've heard tales of stabbings ignored, of bodies left in alleys until the dogs find them, and you quicken your pace, clutching your bag tighter. The shock isn't the chaos itself, it's that this is your world, a daily assault you can't escape. You think of modern cities, paved sidewalks, traffic lights, police who at least pretend to care, and the contrast feels like a cruel joke. In medieval London, the streets are a predator, and you're the prey, dodging carts, thieves, and the ever-present threat of a misstep that could break an ankle or worse. Yet you keep moving, because standing still is surrender. You pass a vendor, his face weathered but defiant, shouting about eels as if they're gold. A child, no older than 7, darts through the crowd carrying a basket of wilted cabbages, his eyes sharp with the kind of cunning only hunger teaches. These people, like you, are survivors, weaving through the city's madness with a stubbornness that borders on miraculous. The gutters, running down the center of the street, are a hazard all their own. They carry the city's refuse, rotting food, coal ash, chamber pot contents dumped from upstairs windows, and the occasional lost shoe, foot optional. Crossing them requires balance and a strong stomach, because one wrong step could send you sliding into a stench that clings for days. You've seen men use sticks to test the depth, their faces grim as if crossing a river of plague. Historical accounts confirm the gutters were a primary source of disease, breeding grounds for bacteria that thrived in the city's filth. You don't know the science, but you've seen enough neighbors fall ill to avoid the murky flow. You leap across, your boots squelching in the mud, and pray you haven't carried something deadly back to your hovel. People are everywhere, a tide of humanity surging through the fog. A woman with a basket of bread brushes past, her eyes downcast, avoiding the leers of men loitering by a tavern. A boy, barefoot and shivering, shouts about roasted chestnuts he can't afford to eat himself. You know him, or someone like him. Children here are workers, not dreamers, their childhoods stolen by the city's demands. Pickpockets glide through the crowd, their hands light as whispers, and you feel a brush against your cloak, a warning to stay alert. The city watch, when they bother to appear, are more interested in bribes than justice, their cudgels swinging lazily as they ignore a scuffle nearby. You've learned to avoid their gaze because drawing attention in these streets is a mistake you might not survive. The noise never stops, a relentless assault that drowns out thought. Vendors compete, their voices overlapping in a desperate chorus. Eels, ale, old shoes, anything to scrape a coin. A preacher stands on a crate, shouting about sin, but no one listens. Sin is the least of your worries when hunger and cold are your daily penance. You pass an alley, dark and narrow, where shadows move with purpose, and you quicken your step, remembering the stories of throats slit for a single penny. The fog hides everything: faces, intentions, dangers, and you've learned to trust your ears more than your eyes. A horse's hooves thunder too close, and you jump aside, heart pounding, as the cart vanishes into the mist like a ghost ship. This chaos, this relentless grind, is what makes medieval London both a nightmare and a marvel. You think of modern streets, clean, ordered, lit by an electric glow, and it feels like a different world. Here, every step is a risk, every moment a test of your will to keep going. Yet there's a strange beauty in the struggle. The vendor still shouting despite the fog stealing his voice, the child running with his cabbages as if the world depends on it, the woman pressing on despite the weight of her basket and her worries. They don't give up, and neither do you. Their lives, like yours, are a testament to resilience, a refusal to let the city's cruelty win. You adjust your cloak, its damp weight a familiar burden, and push forward because in medieval London, moving through the chaos is the only way to live. You trudge through the fog-choked streets of medieval London, your boots sinking into the muck, each step a reminder that the city doesn't care if you make it to work or not. As a tanner's apprentice, your day begins in a workshop that smells worse than the Thames, a hell of heat, noise, and fumes where you spend 14 hours up to your elbows in vats of urine and lime. The hides you scrape are slimy, the air thick with a stench that clings to your skin like a curse. One wrong move and a blade could take a finger, or worse, your job, because there's always someone hungrier waiting to replace you. This isn't work, it's a slow dismantling of your body and spirit, a daily grind that makes you wonder if survival is worth the cost. In medieval London, a job isn't a title, it's a test of endurance, and you're barely passing. The workshop is a cacophony of clanging tools and shouted orders, the air heavy with the acrid bite of tanning chemicals. You stand at a wooden bench, your hands raw from scraping hides, your back aching from hours bent over. The master tanner, a man with a face like weathered leather, barks at you to move faster, his voice cutting through the steam like a whip. You've seen men lose fingers to the blades, their screams drowned out by the relentless rhythm of work. Historical records tell us that medieval laborers faced brutal conditions, long hours, no safety, and wages that barely bought bread. You don't need records to know this. The pain in your hands and the hunger in your gut tell the story. You're not alone in this misery. Every worker in the shop is a ghost of themselves, their bodies breaking under the weight of survival. Across the city, others face their own battles. Men haul timber at the docks, their backs bending by 30, their teeth gone by 40. They shovel coal or drag barrels through the mud, each load a step closer to collapse. Women scrub manor floors until their knuckles bleed, or spin wool in dim corners, their eyes straining in the flickering candlelight. The pay is pennies, enough for a crust of bread, but not the dignity to eat it in peace. Children, some barely old enough to walk, carry buckets or sweep chimneys, their small bodies navigating flues where a slip means death. The crippled, those too broken to labor, beg on street corners or sell matches, ignored by a city that values strength over mercy. You've seen a boy lose a hand to a cartwheel, his cries unanswered as the crowd moved on. In this world, injury isn't a pause, it's a sentence. The shock isn't the work itself, it's the realization that this is your life, a cycle of toil with no end in sight. You think of modern jobs, offices with coffee breaks, safety regulations, weekends, and it feels like a dream spun by a bard who's never smelled a tannery. In medieval London, there was no sick leave, no safety gear, just a foreman yelling to lift faster, breathe quieter, and stop bleeding on the hides. Historical accounts confirm that labor was a leading cause of death, from accidents to exhaustion-driven disease. You feel it in your bones, the weight of a city built on the backs of the poor. Yet you keep scraping, because stopping means starvation, and starvation is a slower, crueler master than the tanner's whip. You glance at the other workers, their faces etched with the same exhaustion you feel. There's Joan, a washerwoman whose hands are cracked like old parchment, her eyes sharp despite the hours spent scrubbing. She mutters a joke about the master's temper, and you smirk, a fleeting spark of defiance in the gloom. There's Tom, a dock worker whose cough sounds like it's carving out his lungs, yet he heaves barrels with a strength you can't fathom. Even the children, scurrying with buckets, find ways to laugh, their voices a rebellion against the grind. These small moments, Joan's wit, Tom's stubbornness, the children's giggles, are what keep the workshop from crushing you entirely. They're not heroes, they're survivors, clinging to life in a city that offers none for free. The work doesn't just break your body, it erases your dreams. You used to imagine a life beyond the tannery, maybe a shop of your own, a hearth that doesn't sputter. But each day, as you scrape and sweat, those dreams fade, buried under the weight of necessity. You're not alone. The city is full of souls like you, grinding through days that blend into years. Historical records describe medieval London as a hub of trade, but for the poor, it was a prison of labor, where every coin earned was spent before it touched their hands. You feel it now, the ache in your shoulders, the hunger that no crust of bread can sate, the knowledge that tomorrow will be no different. Yet there's a strange beauty in this struggle, a resilience that defies the city's cruelty. Joan shares a scrap of bread during a rare pause, her smile a quiet act of rebellion. Tom, between coughs, hums a tune from his village, a reminder of life before the docks. The children, their hands blackened from soot, play a quick game with a broken stick, their laughter a spark in the dark. You think of modern workplaces, where breaks are guaranteed and injuries treated, and you marvel at how these people endure. They don't work for glory or wealth, but for the next meal, the next day, the next breath. Their strength isn't in their muscles, but in their refusal to give up, a stubbornness that carries them through the tannery's stench and the city's indifference. You wipe the sweat from your brow, the blade in your hand trembling from hours of use. The master shouts again, his voice a lash. but you keep going because stopping isn't an option. The hides pile up, each one a small victory, a roof that you're still here. In medieval London, work is a thief, stealing your body and your years, but it's also a tether, tying you to a world that keeps turning. You look at Joan, at Tom, at the children darting through the workshop, and you see it, the unspoken bond of those who toil together, who survive together. They're not just workers, they're warriors, fighting a city that wants to break them. And you, with your aching hands and empty stomach, are one of them, carrying their strength into another grueling day. You pause in the doorway of the tanner's workshop, the stench of urine and lime clinging to your skin, and catch sight of a boy, no older than 5, darting through the medieval London fogs with a bundle of sticks under his arm. His face is smudged with soot, his hands red from the cold, but his eyes burn with a fierce determination that makes your exhaustion feel trivial. In this city, childhood isn't a time of play or wonder. It's a sentence, a brutal initiation into a world that demands labor before it offers mercy. Children here don't chase dreams. They chase pennies, crawl through chimneys, sell matches, or dodge carts to deliver messages. You watch the boy vanish into the haze, and your heart sinks because you know his life, like so many others, is a fight against a city that chews up its young and spits them out broken. The boy is a chimney sweep, one of thousands in medieval London, small enough to squeeze into flues barely wider than a bread loaf. He crawls through the darkness, scraping soot that chokes his lungs, each movement a prayer not to get stuck. A fall means a broken neck. A moment's pause means suffocation, and you've heard stories of boys trapped for hours, their screams ignored by masters too busy to care. Historical records paint a grim picture. Child laborers faced death daily, their lungs blackened by soot, their bodies stunted by malnutrition. You see it in the boy's hollow cheeks, his frame too slight for the bundle he carries. Yet he moves with a purpose that defies his years, as if he's learned that stopping is surrender, and in this city, surrender is death. Down the street, a girl huddles by a market stall, her hands trembling as she offers matches to passers-by. Her fingers are burned from dipping sticks in sulfur, the chemicals bite, eating at her skin until it blisters. She's 6, maybe 7, but her eyes are old, carrying the weight of hunger and cold. She forces a smile, a practiced charm to coax a penny from a merchant, but you know she'll sleep hungry tonight, her earnings barely enough for a crust. You've seen others like her, selling flowers or chestnuts, their voices shrill as they compete with the vendors' shouts. Historical accounts confirm that child labor was rampant, with children as young as 5 working to survive, their bodies and spirits sacrificed to a city that valued profit over pity. The shock isn't just the work these children do, it's that this is normal, expected, a rite of passage in a world that sees them as tools, not souls. You think of modern childhoods, playgrounds, school books, warm beds, and the contrast feels like a betrayal. In medieval London, a child's laughter is a rare rebellion, a spark in a city that tries to snuff it out. You've seen them play, fleeting moments between shifts, tossing pebbles or singing scraps of songs in alleys thick with mud. The boy you saw earlier, the sweep, might giggle with his mates, their voices echoing off crumbling walls, but it's a fragile joy, stolen from a life that offers none for free. The girl at the stall, her hands scarred, hums a tune to herself, a quiet act of defiance against the hunger gnawing at her. You pass another child, a runner, dodging carts with a message clutched in his fist. His bare feet slap the muddy cobbles, and you wince, knowing the stones are sharp and the mud heights worse. He's fast, but not fast enough to outrun the city's dangers. A horse's hoof, a drunk's fist, a fever that strikes without warning. You've heard of children trampled, beaten, or simply vanishing into the fog, their names forgotten as quickly as their lives. Yet they keep running, keep sweeping, and keep selling, because hunger is a stricter master than any tanner or merchant. Their resilience isn't born of choice, but of necessity, a stubborn will to live in a city that doesn't care if they do. These children, for all their suffering, are the heartbeat of London's streets. You see it in their quick smiles, their sharp banter, their ability to find light in the darkest corners. The sweep, covered in soot, shares a joke with another boy, their laughter a blade against the city's cruelty. The match girl, her hands raw, offers a flower to a passing woman, her voice bright despite the cold. You think of modern kids, safe in classrooms. Their biggest worry is a missed snack, and you marvel at these children's strength. They don't just survive, they live, weaving moments of joy into a world that offers none. Their songs, their games, and their defiant grins are proof that even in hell, humanity endures, a legacy of courage that outlasts the fog and the filth. You step back into the fog-drenched streets of medieval London, your hands still raw from the tannery, and catch sight of a woman, her shawl pulled tight against the chill, scrubbing a manor's steps with a ferocity that could rival a knight's. Her knuckles are cracked, her face etched with lines that tell of years spent bending under the city's weight. In this world, women like her carry London on their shoulders, toiling from dawn to dusk in a relentless cycle of labor that offers no rest, no reward, only the faint hope of another day. You know her, or someone like her, a maid, a laundress, a seamstress, whose life is a tapestry of exhaustion woven with threads of grim determination. In medieval London, women don't just work, they endure, their strength a quiet rebellion against a city that expects them to be invisible, silent, and endless. Inside a nearby tenement, another woman bends over a washtub, her hands plunged into icy water that bites like a blade. She scrubs linens for a merchant's household, her fingers red and raw, each stroke a battle against the cold and the clock. The pay is a handful of pennies, barely enough for a loaf of bread, and the work never ends. There's always another shirt, another stain, another demand. Historical records paint a stark picture. Women in medieval London were the backbone of the domestic economy, laboring as maids, laundresses, or seamstresses for wages that kept them teetering on the edge of starvation. You see it in her hunched shoulders, the way she mutters a sharp joke about the merchant's wife, her wit a spark that keeps the cold at bay. She's tired, but she doesn't stop, because stopping means failing her children, her home, and her own stubborn will to survive. Some women, widowed or abandoned, turn to the streets, selling wilted vegetables or questionable pies from rickety stalls. You pass one now, her voice hoarse as she calls out to the crowd, her eyes scanning for a buyer or a thief. Her hands tremble, not just from cold, but from the weight of a life with no safety net. For others, the street offers a darker path, sex work, legal but deadly, where a night's earnings might buy bread, but also risks violence or disease. Historical accounts note that prostitution, though tolerated, was a last resort, a desperate choice for women with no kin, no coin, and no hope. You see the shadow in her gaze, the way she pulls her cloak tighter, not just against the fog, but against the leers of men who see her as less than human. Yet she stands, defiant, her voice cutting through the market's din. The shock isn't the work or the danger, it's that this is expected, a woman's lot in a city that demands their labor but denies their worth. You think of modern lives, maternity leave, workplace rights, the chance to rest, and it feels like a distant fairy tale. In medieval London, women were the unseen engine, cleaning, sewing, selling, and surviving, all while expected to be virtuous, quiet, and tireless. Yet they find ways to fight back, not with swords, but with humor, with whispered jests in the market that mock the rich or the cruel. You overhear a laundress laugh. Her voice dries as she quips about a lord's stained breeches, and you can't help but smile. It's not much, but it's enough. A fleeting defiance that keeps her spirit alive. These women, for all their exhaustion, are the city's pulse. You see it in the maid scrubbing steps, her hands moving with a rhythm born of necessity. You hear it in the vendor's call, her voice unbroken despite the fog's weight. Even the seamstress, sewing in a dim corner until her eyes blur, hums a tune, her needle a quiet weapon against despair. Their resilience isn't loud or heroic. It's stubborn, woven into every stitch, every scrub, every step through the mud. You think of today's world, where women's work is seen, valued, and protected, and you marvel at these women's strength. They don't just survive, they live, raising children, sharing laughter, and holding up a city that barely notices. In medieval London, their work is endless, their hope scarce, but their spirit is unbreakable, a legacy of grit that echoes through the ages. You stumble back into your medieval London hovel, the tannery's stench still clinging to your clothes, and feel a tickle in your throat, a warning that disease is never far away. In this city, illness isn't a visitor, it's a neighbor, lurking in the air, the water, the very walls that shelter you. Your cousin lies in the corner, his cough a deep, rattling thing that spits blood onto the straw, a grim sign of tuberculosis that's claimed half the street. The children huddle close, their eyes wide with fear, because in medieval London, death doesn't knock. It slips in through the cracks, as silent and relentless as the fog outside. You clutch your cloak, hoping it's just the cold making you shiver, but you know better. Disease is a thief, stealing breath and hope with equal indifference. The air in your room is thick with dampness and despair, a breeding ground for the fevers and plagues that stalk the city. Down the street, a family mourns a child taken by dysentery, their wails muffled by the fog but sharp enough to pierce your heart. A cut on your hand, earned from a slip in the tannery, festers under its grimy bandage, and you pray it's not the bad fever that turns a scratch into a death sentence. Historical records paint a brutal picture. Medieval London was a petri dish for disease, with tuberculosis, cholera, and unnamed fevers thriving in the filth of overcrowded tenements. You don't know the science, but you've seen enough bodies carted away to fear every cough, every ache, every drop of tainted water. Medicine here is more hope than help. You've heard of doctors, but they're for lords with coin, not for you. Instead, you turn to the apothecary's stall, where a vial of laudanum, opium mixed with sour wine, promises relief for everything from toothaches to the grief of losing a child. It dulls the pain and makes your cousin's cough seem distant, but it doesn't cure, nothing does. You've tried herbs, boiled nettles, and prayers whispered over a candle, but they're as useless as the bucket in the corner. Historical accounts note that medieval medicine relied on superstition and guesswork, with leeches and bleeding as common as any tonic. You've seen a neighbor dose her fevered son with laudanum, his eyes glassy as he slipped away, relaxed but not saved. The shock isn't the presence of disease, it's how ordinary it is, how death weaves itself into the fabric of daily life. You think of modern hospitals, sterile rooms, vaccines, doctors who wash their hands, and it feels like a fairy tale spun by a bard who's never seen a plague cart. In medieval London, illness is a constant, a shadow that follows you from the tannery to the market to the hovel you call home. You've stopped crying at funerals. There are too many, and tears don't bring back the dead. Your cousin's wife, her face hollow from worry, tends to him with a rag and a prayer, her hands steady despite the fear in her eyes. She's buried 2 children already, yet she keeps going because stopping means letting death win. There's a strange resilience in this grim dance with mortality. You see it in the neighbors who share their meager herbs, in the children who sing despite their father's cough, and the woman down the street who brews tea for a sick friend, knowing it might not help. They don't fight death with science or wealth, but with stubbornness, a refusal to let it claim their spirit. You think of today's world, where a fever is a day off work, not a death sentence, and you marvel at their strength. These people, your people, live with death as a constant companion, yet they laugh, love, and endure. You wrap your cloak tighter, ignoring the ache in your bones, and step back into the fog, because in medieval London, surviving another day is a quiet victory over a city that buries its own without a second glance. You stand in your medieval London hovel, the tannery's stench still heavy on your skin, and eye the cracked jug in the corner with a mix of dread and necessity. Water, the stuff of life, is your enemy here, a murky gamble that could end you as easily as thirst. The Thames, London's pulsing artery, is less a river and more a sewer, carrying a vile stew of human waste, dead dogs, and tannery runoff that smells like despair itself. You fetch your water from a public pump down the street, shared by hundreds and fouled by whatever the city coughs up. It's cloudy, tasting of iron and regret, and you know, one wrong sip, and you're joining the neighbors in the churchyard. In medieval London, water isn't a gift, it's a loaded blade, and every drink is a dance with death. You've seen what happens when the pump betrays you. A family 2 doors down fell to cholera last month, their bodies carted away before dawn, their cries still echoing in your mind. Historical records confirm the Thames was a death trap, its waters spreading disease faster than gossip in a tavern. You boil what you can, but firewood is dearer than bread, and the kettle's meager flame feels like a taunt. Bathing? A cruel jest. The wealthy might soak in heated tubs, but you share a tin bucket with your entire household, the water gray by the time it's your turn. Laundry and dishes use the same slop, and you pray it's not the batch that killed a neighbor's child. Cleanliness is a luxury, and you're as poor in that as you are in coin. The shock isn't just the filth, it's that this is normal, a daily risk everyone accepts. You think of modern taps, clean water at a twist, showers that wash away the day, and it feels like a bard's wild tale. In medieval London, thirst is a predator, and every gulp is a roll of the dice. Yet you see resilience in the faces around you. Your cousin's wife, her hands cracked from scrubbing, boils water with a fierce focus, her muttered curses a shield against despair. The children, despite their hunger, giggle as they splash in the bucket, turning necessity into a game. They don't know a world where water doesn't bite, but they live anyway, their laughter a quiet rebellion against the city's cruelty. You pour a cup, the liquid is murky but hot, and you drink, because in this world, surviving the simplest act is a triumph worth celebrating. You slip through the fog-drenched streets of medieval London, your tanner's wages barely enough for a crust of bread, and notice a shadow darting past. An urchin no older than 10, with fingers nimble enough to lift a merchant's purse before he blinks. In this city, where honest work grinds your bones to dust for pennies, crime isn't rebellion, it's survival, a twisted lifeline for those the tannery or the streets can't feed. You've seen them in the market, pickpockets gliding through crowds, their hands light as whispers, and vendors selling stolen candles under tattered cloaks. You're no thief, but hunger gnaws, and the alleys whisper temptation. A quick snatch, a fast scam, and maybe you'll eat tonight. In medieval London, crime isn't the opposite of work. It's a job, and for many, it's the only one hiring. The boy you saw, swift and silent, is a dipper, as they call them, trained by older rogues in the art of theft. He'll slip a coin purse or a loaf from a stall, vanishing into the fog before the victim notices. You've heard of women running twilight houses, backroom dens where stolen goods change hands, hidden under layers of shawls and lies. Some peddle fake relics, bones sold as saints' fingers, to gullible pilgrims, their smiles as sharp as their wits. Historical records reveal that crime in medieval London was organized, with syndicates carving out territories and bribing the city watch to look away. You know those alleys, dark and narrow, where deals are struck, and you've felt the brush of a thief's hand, a reminder to clutch your own meager belongings tighter. The shock isn't the crime itself, it's how normal it feels, woven into the city's pulse like the mud or the fog. You think of modern laws, police, cameras, consequences, and it's a world apart. Here, the watch is as likely to pocket your coin as to catch a thief, their cudgels more for show than justice. Yet you see resilience in these rogues. The urchin, his eyes bright with cunning, shares a stolen apple with a friend, their laughter a spark in the gloom. The woman fencing stolen goods hums a tune, her defiance tucked into every note. They're not villains, they're survivors, outwitting a city that starves them. You think of today's safety nets, welfare, jobs, justice, and marvel at their grit, turning desperation into a craft. Their quick hands, a quiet rebellion against a world that offers nothing else. Night falls over medieval London, and the fog thickens, wrapping your hovel in a shroud that feels more like a threat than a blanket. You bar the flimsy door, its creak a feeble protest against the darkness, but safety is a lie in this city. The streets, chaotic by day, turn sinister under the flickering glow of oil lamps, their light too weak to pierce the mist. Shadows move in the alleys, thieves, cutthroats, or worse, their footsteps soft as whispers in the muck. A scream slices through the night, then fades, unanswered, because in medieval London, no one investigates the dark. You lie on your straw mattress, one ear tuned to the creaks of the tenement, knowing that danger doesn't sleep. Here, night isn't rest. It's a gauntlet, and survival means keeping one eye open. The air grows colder, the damp seeping through the walls, like a guest who won't leave. You hear Reginald the rat scratching, bolder now, as if he owns the night. Outside, the city hums with peril, a clatter of hooves, a muffled curse, the crack of breaking glass from a brawl 2 floors down. Fires are the real terror. A tipped candle or a sparking chimney can turn your home to ash in minutes. Historical records note that medieval London's wooden tenements burned often, with no fire brigades to save them, just neighbors shouting and throwing buckets into flames they couldn't tame. You've seen the charred remains of a house down the street, its occupants gone, their names forgotten. You clutch your blanket, threadbare and useless, praying the oil lamp doesn't betray you tonight. The shock isn't the danger, it's how it's woven into the city's bones, as ordinary as the fog or the filth. You think of modern nights, locked doors, streetlights, alarms, and it feels like a bard's fantasy. In medieval London, darkness is a predator, and you're its prey, listening for the creak of stairs or the snap of a twig. Yet there's defiance in this vigilance. Your cousin's wife, exhausted from scrubbing, hums a lullaby to calm the children, her voice a small rebellion against the night's menace. The stranger in the corner, usually silent, shares a muttered tale of his village, a fleeting spark of connection. These people, your people, don't just survive the dark, they live in it. Their whispered songs and stubborn hearts proof that even in hell, hope flickers. Dawn creeps into medieval London, but it's a lie, a gray smear of light that struggles through the fog like a tired guest. You stir in your hovel, the straw mattress prickling your skin, and squint at the cracked window, hoping for a glimpse of sun. Instead, you get smoke and ash, the city's breath coating everything, your hair, your cloak, your lungs, until you're as much soot as human. The air smells of charred wood and despair, a reminder that in this city, daylight is just a dimmer shade of night. You wipe your face with a rag, and it comes away black, as if the fog has branded you. This isn't morning. It's a grudging pause in the dark, a moment to brace yourself for another day of mud, hunger, and toil. The city wakes with a groan, its sounds bleeding through the thin walls, coughs that rattle like death, cartwheels grinding on cobbles, a vendor's shout about yesterday's fish. You hear your cousin's wife muttering, her voice sharp as she chides the children for dawdling. Reginald the rat, your boldest roommate, scurries across the floor, unbothered by the light that isn't there. Historical records describe medieval London's air as a toxic haze, with smoke from countless fires mixing with river damp to choke the city's poor. You feel it now, each breath a gritty assault, your throat raw as if you've swallowed the tannery's fumes. The sun, if it exists, is a myth, hidden behind a curtain of smog that makes even hope feel like a luxury. The shock isn't the lack of light, it's that this half-dawn is normal, a daily surrender to a city that offers no brightness. You think of modern mornings, golden sunlight, clean air, the hum of a coffee maker, and it feels like a bard's wild tale. In medieval London, dawn is just another challenge, a reminder that survival demands you rise despite the gloom, yet there's defiance in this act. Your cousin's wife, her hands worn from scrubbing, hums as she sweeps the floor, her tune a quiet rebellion against the fog. The children, their faces smudged, giggle over a broken spoon, turning misery into a game. They don't know a world where dawn brings warmth, but they live anyway, their small joys a spark in the gray. You pull your cloak tighter, its damp weight a familiar burden, and step toward the door. The city waits, its fog and filth ready to test you again. You think of those who came before, who faced these same gray mornings and kept going, not because they were strong, but because they had to. Their resilience, woven into every cough, every step, every muttered jest, is what keeps London alive. You're part of it, a stubborn soul carrying their legacy through the muck. The fog may hide the sun, but it can't snuff out the will to endure, a quiet triumph that burns brighter than any dawn. You stand at the threshold of your medieval London hovel, the fog's gray weight still pressing against you, and wonder, could you survive this? A day, maybe, before the hunger, the filth, or the relentless cold broke you. The tannery's stench lingers on your skin, the echo of your cousin's cough haunts your ears, and the memory of that murky water makes your stomach churn. In this city, survival isn't a choice. It's a battle, fought with every muddy step, every stale crust, every shallow breath through the choking haze. You've lived a day in their shoes, tattered, soaked, and barely holding together, and it's left you reeling, marveling at the sheer stubbornness that kept medieval Londoners alive. This wasn't just a city, it was a crucible, forging resilience in the face of a world that seemed designed to crush them. The shock isn't just the hardship, it's the realization that these people, your people, endured it, not because they were stronger, but because they had no other option. You think of modern comforts, hot showers, stocked fridges, medicine that works, and it feels like a betrayal of their struggle. Historical records tell us medieval London was a place of relentless toil, where disease and poverty claimed lives as easily as the fog swallowed light. Yet they didn't just survive, they lived. Your cousin's wife, her hands worn to bone, hummed lullabies to her children. The urchin in the market, his fingers nimble from theft, shared a stolen apple with a friend. Even Reginald the rat, scurrying through the muck, seemed to have a purpose. Their lives, woven from scraps of joy and defiance, were a testament to a human spirit that no amount of filth could smother. You close the door on this imagined day, the creak of its hinges, a final note in this grim symphony. You're back in your modern world, where clean water flows and dawn brings light, not dread. But the echo of medieval London lingers, a reminder of those who sang in taverns, loved in cramped hovels, and laughed through the mud. They weren't heroes. They were human, stubborn, and raw, carrying a city's weight on their aching backs. Their resilience wasn't born of glory, but of necessity, a quiet triumph that resonates through time. As you settle into your bed, far from the fog and the filth, you feel a flicker of gratitude, not just for your comforts, but for their strength, a legacy of survival that hums softly like a whispered tale, urging you to rest and remember. You stand at the threshold of your medieval London hovel, the fog's gray weight still pressing against you, and wonder, could you survive this? A day, maybe, before the hunger, the filth, or the relentless cold broke you. The tannery's stench lingers on your skin, the echo of your cousin's cough haunts your ears, and the memory of that murky water makes your stomach churn. In this city, survival isn't a choice, it's a battle, fought with every muddy step, every stale crust, every shallow breath through the choking haze. You've lived a day in their shoes, tattered, soaked, and barely holding together, and it's left you reeling, marveling at the sheer stubbornness that kept medieval Londoners alive. And this wasn't just a city, it was a crucible, forging resilience in the face of a world that seemed designed to crush them. The shock isn't just the hardship, it's the realization that these people, your people, endured it, not because they were stronger, but because they had no other option. You think of modern comforts, hot showers, stocked fridges, medicine that works, and it feels like a betrayal of their struggle. Historical records tell us medieval London was a place of relentless toil, where disease and poverty claimed lives as easily as the fog swallowed light. Yet they didn't just survive, they lived. Your cousin's wife, her hands worn to bone, hummed lullabies to her children. The urchin in the market, his fingers nimble from theft, shared a stolen apple with a friend. Even Reginald the rat, scurrying through the muck, seemed to have a purpose. Their lives, woven from scraps of joy and defiance, were a testament to a human spirit that no amount of filth could smother. You close the door on this imagined day, the creak of its hinges a final note in this grim symphony. You're back in your modern world, where clean water flows and dawn brings light, not dread. But the echo of medieval London lingers, a reminder of those who sang in taverns, loved in cramped hovels, and laughed through the mud. They weren't heroes. They were human, stubborn, and raw, carrying a city's weight on their aching backs. Their resilience wasn't born of glory, but of necessity, a quiet triumph that resonates through time. As you settle into your bed, far from the fog and the filth, you feel a flicker of gratitude, not just for your comforts, but for their strength, a legacy of survival that hums softly like a whispered tale, urging you to rest and remember. In the rugged heart of ancient Sparta, where discipline was a religion and honor a currency, Gorgoas, daughter of King Cleomenes the First, wife of King Leonidas, and mother of King Pleistarchus, emerged as a figure of singular brilliance, her name etched into history with a sharpness that defies the centuries. Unlike the cloistered women of Athens, confined to weaving and silence, Spartan women were forged in a crucible of physical and intellectual rigor, trained to run, wrestle, and speak with a clarity that cut like a blade. Gorgo was no mere royal ornament. She was a strategist, a voice of unyielding resolve, whose wisdom shaped Sparta's destiny through war and loss. Her life, preserved in the writings of Herodotus, stands as a testament to a woman who wielded power, not through a crown, but through intellect, her words echoing louder than the clash of hoplite shields. Born into Sparta's dual monarchy, Gorgo was raised in a world where politics was a battlefield and loyalty to the state was paramount. As the only child of Cleomenes, a king whose erratic brilliance bordered on madness, she learned early to navigate the knife edge of power. At just 8 or 9, she displayed a precocity that stunned the Spartan court, boldly warning her father against a Persian ambassador's bribe with words as sharp as a spear. "Father, you had better leave, or this stranger will corrupt you." The ambassador was expelled, and Gorgo's reputation was born, a child whose insight could sway kings. This moment, recorded by Herodotus, was no mere anecdote. It revealed a mind already attuned to the dangers of betrayal, a skill that would define her legacy in a city that prized clarity over flattery. Her marriage to Leonidas, the warrior king of Thermopylae fame, was no romantic tale, but a partnership of equals, forged in the Spartan tradition of mutual respect. Unlike other Greek queens, Gorgo did not fade into the shadows of her husband's reign. She stood beside him, her counsel shaping decisions as Persia's shadow loomed over Greece. In the tense build-up to the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BCE, Gorgo's most famous words, delivered with chilling precision, sent Leonidas and his 300 to their doom. Come back with your shield or on it. This was no tearful farewell, but a command, a distillation of Spartan honor that demanded death over dishonor. Her words, preserved in historical memory, did not just inspire a king. They forged a myth, cementing Thermopylae as a symbol of defiance against overwhelming odds. After Leonidas's fall, Gorgo's influence did not wane but grew, her presence a steadying force in a Sparta shaken by loss. As mother to the young Pleistarchus, she guided his early years, instilling the values of duty and sacrifice that defined her city. When a cryptic message arrived on a wax-covered tablet, warning of a Persian advance, the Spartan council faltered, baffled by its blank surface. Gorgo, with her characteristic clarity, instructed them to scrape away the wax, revealing the hidden words beneath, a move that likely saved thousands of lives. Her ability to solve such riddles, noted by Herodotus, underscored her role not just as a queen, but as a strategist, her mind a weapon as potent as any spear. The shock of Gorgo's story lies not in her deeds alone, but in her rarity, a woman whose name survives in a world that often erased female voices. While modern societies celebrate figures like her with statues or films, ancient Sparta honored her in life, valuing her intellect in a way Athens never could. Her legacy, preserved in sparse but vivid accounts, speaks to a woman who embodied Sparta's ideals, discipline, honor, and a refusal to yield. She didn't fight on battlefields, but her words shaped wars, her wisdom steadied a nation. Compared to today's world, where women's voices are amplified, Gorgo's quiet power, wielded without fanfare, feels all the more profound. Her life reminds us that strength need not shout. It endures, like a Spartan shield, unyielding in the face of time. In the sun-scorched expanses of Jordan's desert, where sand stretches like an endless sea and silence reigns over the horizon, the Umayyad Caliphate of the 7th and 8th centuries left behind a constellation of enigmatic structures, desert castles that shimmer like mirages of a lost empire. These were not fortresses built to repel invaders, nor outposts guarding trade routes. They were lavish retreats, pleasure palaces, and diplomatic stages, crafted to proclaim the Umayyads' mastery over both nature and culture. Rising from the arid emptiness, these castles, Qusayr Amra, Qasr al-Qarana, Qasr al-Mashata, stand as testaments to a dynasty that dared to paint elegance on desolation. Their walls, once alive with frescoes and intricate stonework, whisper of a time when the desert was not a void to be feared, but a canvas for imperial ambition, a place where power, art, and luxury bloomed against all odds. Qusayr Amra, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is perhaps the most evocative of these relics, its modest exterior belying a vibrant interior that defies the starkness of its surroundings. Built in the early 8th century, likely under Caliph Walid Mimlus, it served as a bathhouse and pleasure palace, its walls adorned with frescoes that challenge modern assumptions about early Islamic art. Here, musicians strum lutes, dancers sway, and zodiac constellations swirl across a domed ceiling, blending Islamic restraint with Byzantine and Persian exuberance. One striking panel depicts 6 kings and rulers from Byzantium, Persia, and beyond, seemingly bowing to Umayyad might, a bold piece of visual propaganda carved in pigment. These images, far from the anachronism often associated with Islam, reveal a dynasty unafraid to embrace the cultural riches of the lands it conquered, creating a space where luxury and diplomacy mingled under starlit skies. Qasr al-Kharana, by contrast, wears a more enigmatic mask. From a distance, its limestone walls and narrow slits suggest a fortress, a stronghold rising defiantly from the desert. Yet closer inspection reveals no battlements, no water source, no signs of a garrison, a castle that looks martial but behaves like a salon. Historians debate its purpose, perhaps a caravan stop, perhaps a meeting place for Bedouin tribes, its 60 rooms arranged around a courtyard suggesting gatherings of trade or talk. Graffiti etched into its walls, left by travelers from distant regions, hints at its role as a crossroads of culture, a place where the Umayyads flexed their influence over nomadic allies. Its ambiguity is its allure, a riddle in stone that speaks of a dynasty skilled in projecting power through presence rather than force. Qasr al-Mashada, though unfinished, dazzles with ambition, its southern facade a masterpiece of early Islamic stonework. Carved with geometric patterns, floral motifs, and stylized animals, it weaves together Byzantine, Sasanian, and Islamic aesthetics, a visual manifesto of the Umayyads' cosmopolitan identity. Much of this facade now resides in Berlin's Pergamon Museum, a gift from an Ottoman sultan, leaving the Jordanian ruins to whisper of a dream cut short. Likely intended as a winter palace, Mashhad was meant to impress, its scale and artistry signaling wealth to tribal leaders and foreign envoys. Its abrupt abandonment, perhaps due to a caliph's death or shifting priorities, adds a layer of melancholy, a monument to an empire's reach frozen in mid-stride. These castles, scattered across the desert's vast emptiness, were not random follies, but deliberate acts of power. Their remoteness was their point, a declaration that the Umayyads could tame even the harshest landscapes. Positioned near seasonal water sources or ancient trade routes, they served as administrative hubs or diplomatic retreats, far from Damascus's prying eyes. Their frescoes and baths, their star-painted ceilings and intricate carvings, were not mere decadence but calculated displays of sophistication, proving the Umayyads were heirs to a multi-civilizational legacy. Historical accounts suggest these sites hosted tribal negotiations, hunting expeditions, and stargazing blending practicality with poetry in a way that still captivates scholars and travelers today. The shock lies not in their beauty, but in their audacity, building oases of culture where nothing should thrive. Compare this to modern architectural marvels, skyscrapers, museums, resorts, and the Umayyads' ambition feels timeless, their castles a testament to human ingenuity in defiance of nature. Today, these ruins, weathered by sand and time, stand as silent storytellers, their faded frescoes and crumbling walls echoing an empire that saw the desert, not as a barrier, but as a stage. For those who wander their halls, they offer more than history. They offer awe, a reminder that even in desolation, humanity can create beauty that endures, whispering tales of power and pride to those who listen. In the vast tapestry of human history, the quest to measure time weaves a thread as old as civilization itself, a story that begins with ancient eyes tracking the moon's ghostly dance across the sky. Long before clocks or calendars, Paleolithic peoples carved notches into bones, like the Ishango bone from 20,000 years ago, marking the lunar cycle's 29.5-day rhythm. These early marks, etched in antler or stone, were not mere scratches but sacred acts, tying human life to the heavens' pulse. The moon, with its waxing and waning, was humanity's first clock, guiding hunters and gatherers through seasons of scarcity and plenty. Unlike modern time, precise and mechanical, this was a fluid rhythm, a whispered agreement between earth and sky, where time was not a number, but a story passed by firelight and carved into the bones of the past. As societies settled into agricultural rhythms, the moon's cycle alone proved insufficient. Farmers needed to know when to plant, when to harvest, when the rains would come or the frost would bite. The sun, with its subtle shifts across the horizon, offered a new measure. Ancient sky watchers, from Egypt to Mesopotamia, noticed the solstices and equinoxes, those cosmic pivots marking the year's longest and shortest days. Stonehenge, built around 2500 BCE, stands as a testament to this shift, its massive stones aligned to capture the sun's rise on the summer solstice, a silent calendar carved in earth and rock. Across the globe, similar structures, Nabta Playa in Egypt, Chaco Canyon in North America, mapped the sun's path, blending science with reverence. For these cultures, the sun was not just light, but divinity. Its return after the longest night, a cause for celebration, a promise of rebirth woven into festivals and myths. Yet the moon and sun were uneasy partners. 12 lunar months fell short of the solar year by 11 days, causing festivals to drift from their seasons, a chaos that frustrated early civilizations. The Babylonians, with their mathematical precision, added intercalary months to align their lunar calendar with the sun's cycle, a practice echoed by the Egyptians, whose 365-day solar calendar was a bold leap forward. By 45 BCE, Julius Caesar, advised by astronomers, introduced the Julian calendar, a 365.25-day system with a leap day every 4 years, standardizing time across the Roman Empire. This was no mere bureaucratic fix. It was a declaration of control, a way to synchronize taxes, wars, and worship across vast lands. The calendar became a tool of power, its months, named for gods like Mars or emperors like Caesar, carving imperial ambition into the rhythm of days. By the 16th century, the Julian calendar's slight overreach, 11 minutes too long each year, had shifted the spring equinox, disrupting the Church's Easter calculations. Pope Gregory III, in 1582, launched a radical reform, skipping 10 days and refining leap years to align the calendar with the solar cycle within a mere 26 seconds. The Gregorian calendar, though met with resistance from Protestant and Orthodox nations, became the global standard, its precision a triumph of human ingenuity over celestial drift. Meanwhile, the 7-day week, rooted in Babylonian astronomy and Jewish tradition, endured as a cultural artifact, its rhythm unshaken by the stars. Unlike months or years, the week had no natural basis, yet it shaped work, rest, and worship, a human imposition on time's endless flow. The shock of this history lies not in the mechanics, but in its audacity, humanity's refusal to let time remain an untamed force. From bones to stone circles to atomic clocks, which measure seconds with cesium vibrations, accurate to a fraction in millions of years, we've wrested control from the heavens. Compare this to today's world, where time governs everything: flights, markets, even this video streaming at 2:25 p.m. on July 7th, 2025, and the contrast is humbling. Ancient peoples didn't just track time, they gave it meaning, weaving it into rituals and empires. Their legacy lives in our calendars, our clocks, our very sense of order. As you listen, drifting toward sleep, their story, etched in stone, refined in starlight, reminds us that time is not just measured, but cherished, a human triumph that binds past to present with every tick. As the fog of medieval London fades and Gorgo's sharp voice softens, we've wandered through time, past desert castles and starlit calendars, where human grit carved stories from stone. These tales, whispered in the night, carry the weight of those who endured, loved, and laughed against all odds. Let your shoulders ease, your breath slow, as the past cradles you toward sleep. If your eyes still linger, share a thought. What stirred your heart in these ancient echoes? Tomorrow night, another story waits, a gentle thread to weave you into history's embrace. For now, let the stars above and the resilience below guide you to rest, as time's quiet rhythm hums you into dreams.